here with the crew that we played Cyberpunk. We got Q, we got Rachel with Ray Ray Cosplay. We've got Evan, and of course we've got Blood Axe over on the Skype. So let's we're gonna do this Cyberpunk Red. All right, so we actually finally got around to being able to play Cyberpunk Red. We did the whole did a quick session with that, and I don't know, it was fun.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but let's go ahead and I guess I mean, how detailed do we want to go in with this, guys? Like how detailed do y'all want to talk about Cyberpunk?
I mean, as if this is intended to sell people or not sell people on it.
No. This is just
honest opinions.
To be honest.
Yeah, honest opinions.
Here.
Are we going to talk about the actual game we played or just the gameplay itself?
Mostly the gameplay itself. Like, you know, because I mean, here's my thing. So, a game session is as good as the players and them getting along. What sells a book or sells a system is the system and the book.
Absolutely.
Not the players.
Because a bad party will make the best system suck.
Yeah.
And a good party can make tiddlywinks fun.
Amazing.
You're playing with sticks
and
rocks, and you'll have a good time.
I guess first we'll talk about the thing you're putting your money on, and that's either the PDF or the book. So, what did you guys think about this book, Evan?
Okay, so I am usually the one who's having to make characters. Like whenever Rachel and I are role playing at all, I'm the one who usually I will make Rachel's character and then let her figure out how she wants to change it. And I'll basically just give me a what role do you want to be?
Skeleton, and then
give me what role do you want to be? I'll plug in the stuff for how it's supposed to work. So I find myself having to make two characters a lot, and
I genuinely tried this time.
Yeah, you
did.
It
was
so
difficult.
Rachel couldn't even start. I was having a lot of having a tough week at work, so my brain was a little fried trying to do anything and then trying to come home. This is one of the worst laid out things I've ever seen. You have to go to this page and then skip 8 pages ahead and then go back to that page and then skip 200 pages ahead and then go back.
Rachel, did you actually look at the book?
I did. I genuinely tried because I knew that we were going to be on the show and wanted to review it. And I am definitely coming into I've not played a ton of role play games. D&D was my main one, and then until you guys, I didn't play Pathfinder, and this is definitely my first Cyberpunk anything. So I genuinely wanted to try, and I'm I think I've got enough role play game reading experience to try to figure out how to make a character. It was super difficult. I couldn't. I gave up. I was Evan, you're gonna have to make the base for this, and then I'll have to read up how to personalize and everything. But it was if this was someone's first tabletop role-playing game, forget
Scare
it.
them off for the rest of it.
Yeah, they'd probably never wanted to,
That would end it.
Yeah, it was just so difficult. And Evan was right. You just have to, nothing was, I guess I'll just compare it to D&D because that's where I've made the most characters. D&D, it's super simple to, just flip through a book and be okay, I want to be a paladin. It gives you everything laid out. Here's what, even a quick build, you could just roll a D10 and have your character, Yeah, there was so much more, and things were so expensive, I couldn't do what I, really wanted to do.
Well, we'll
with my
talk
character.
about that more with the system.
Anyway, the actual book, the layout, and I don't know why. I mean, aesthetically, I get why they chose the font that they did, but on the PDF, it did not work a lot.
It was a bad font for PDF. Yeah. Q. What do you have to say about the book?
As somebody who owns a massive collection of PDFs, I actually, purchased this too. So when we talk about money, I'm the one that spent the most money on it. You know what I'm saying? And I gotta say that for out of PDFs I purchased and for the price that they asked for this, didn't quite measure up. Very difficult to read without really enlarging it. I finally, after hours of building it, found out, go to page 42 and go from there. I'm going to tell you right now, if you get it, go to page 42 if you're going to build a character. But to just kind of go on the book as a whole, it didn't really draw me in. The artwork's nice. The storytelling's interesting, But like as far as it being a book, I sat down and started reading, and I ended up reading the whole book cover to cover. Nah, I couldn't wait to kind of just get my character done and stop. And like I was just like, okay, I'm done. And I told Zeno, I can't remember what I said, I don't know a lot about Night City because I'm sick of reading this already from the character creation. It's not hard to make a character after you learn how to do it, but like they said, the first time of learning it is going to be really hard and slow. Well, and then after that, you can crank characters out.
I think if you're just really going for a quick character and you're not putting a lot of love into it, you can go through it pretty quickly.
But the problem is, like, even to do it quickly, you still have to learn how to. Also, and that was the problem that I had.
Well, I'm saying with method 1, so they have 3 methods on this thing, and we'll talk about that more. With method 1, I thought it wasn't laid out too bad. I thought if it was a book, because we were going off the PDF because apparently the print was not high on this book, so apparently they weren't expecting to sell many. I know our local comic shop ordered 8, they got 2, and then they told they wouldn't get any more till I think the next printing was said January. So
I feel like if it was a book, flipping back and forth would not have been so taxing and annoying.
Oh, I don't know. I feel it would have been just as bad.
I don't know, because like the PDF,
I've seen that style before in other books. Like I said, the whole reason why I know about the stock at the local comic shop is because I went to the local comic shop after trying to read this as a PDF because of this damn font.
I felt that way. Like I also just like books in general because like I can put like a sticky note right here, or it's not, and also like, I mean, just trying to scroll and like you accidentally tap something and like sends you somewhere else and you're like, fuck. Or if I multitask on my phone, the second you X out of it and come back, you're back to the front page. It's just...
The way I think about it is, this is a document you're handing me, and I get a lot of big documents at work that are handed to me. If you handed me this document at work as a completed product for me to use, you probably would lose your job. Yeah. Like, it was to the point where you shouldn't hand something over to somebody for them to use for its intended purpose and have them go, what the fuck do I do now? Like, where the fuck do I go?
I got to disagree with, not you, but Zeno on the organization. Like, no, I mean, I'm a guy who, let's be honest, I'm the OCD min-maxer. So when I sit on PDFs all the time for Pathfinder, building my monk and helping Bloodaxe knows that I had pulled up like several PDFs and sites. I was all over the place. And that's why I know I have the highest tolerance of anyone in this room for combing a PDF. And this was vastly more difficult because, for example, you can completely miss your cybernetics. Oh. If you're not careful, absolutely. You'll miss whole sections of stuff
I will say, well, with the way the bookmarks were set on the PDF, I actually missed originally the whole story, backstory, all that stuff. Because the first time it mentions method 1 for creating a character, it's already past lifestyle and all that stuff.
A lot of people didn't know they even had a roll ability or what it was. I was sitting there explaining, like, you've got a roll ability, but it pops up in a weird place that's like before character creation.
Well, it'll tell you, like, because I remember reading what my ability was, but when I read it, like, because I was playing a solo, I read on the little solo thing that you have an ability, and this is what it's called. And it doesn't tell you anything about what it does. And then I had to, it was like right before we got here, I just happened to stumble across where it tells you what the roll ability does.
The cybernetics part, like you were talking about, I totally missed my cybernetics until we were playing.
I had to hunt it down for it because it wasn't like it was in the character creation.
Evan, like I said, Evan had gotten burnt out after making John Doe, that he just kind of gave me the stats and was like, here is your character name, here's your stats, customize it yourself.
It's not even with your equipment. It's like somewhere else. It's like you would think when you get your equipment, you get your cybernetics, but no, it's like somewhere else.
It's a completely different section. Like, they were definitely... I mean, I was like still finishing my character.
Well, and I wasn't saying that the organization was good. I'm saying that I've seen the style before. of the hopping around in other books. Now, I normally, like I said, I don't have the book, so I don't know how well the physical book translated for flipping. It always translates horrible as a PDF though. So anyway, I'm pretty sure everybody I think has a consensus though that the book was not put together well.
The PDF was not put well together.
Well, I mean, the book is the printed version of the PDF.
In general.
So the organization in general for the book is not good. So now we'll move over to story. Now with the story, I guess I'll start us off here. We'll go back the other way. I will say I came in knowing a bit about Cyberpunk because I played Cyberpunk 2020 a long time ago. Didn't remember a lot. And it was still hard to read this story. I will say, like, D&D, Wizards of the Coast actually probably did the best with their book because they wrote the story like somebody was telling you a story.
Right.
Not like, we're going to feed you information about this. Now we're going to feed you information about this. And not leaving a bunch of gaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell you to look other places to get more details, and it's like, that's not how you write a story. So I will say I was extremely disappointed with how they put the story together to try to get you informed. And it was a pretty hard read. What about you, Q?
Same thing, man. I mean, it was a shocker to me. I mean, yeah, lately I'm not as good as I used to be at reading stories. Like, I play Pathfinder, I haven't read a lot about Galarians. But when I do look at it, it's not because it's not interesting. It's just
well, this
none
was
of
a
my
lack
GMs
of
run stuff in the core setting.
This was a lack of detail on.
Well, no, I
Yeah.
tried. That's what I was
the
going to
story.
say. Too much of the information was given as short stories that I couldn't get into. I'm sorry, Johnny Silverhand. Even though I tried to imagine Miss Keanu Reeves, I didn't care about his story. Like, I just couldn't get into it.
I guess that was another thing they did switch. They had the little side panel short story or the little short story for this column, and then they have just an information dump that has a bunch of gaps in it. I don't know what they were thinking.
They didn't snap me up. That's the problem, though.
Yeah.
It's like they weren't grabbing me, and it's odd because even though we're going to talk about this later, love the artwork. Book's beautiful, cool style, but for some reason that style did not actually leak into the story they were presenting, which is so weird. I feel like Blood Axe embodied cyberpunk style way better, and I'm not going to go full detail in a session, than anything in the book did. Like, he really did a good job there. So,
well, I will say in the DM section, I was running it. In the DM sections, they play up the style more. And they basically, it's one of those things of, they're like, here's the style you need to present this to your players. You need to build up the environment, which was sort of not the best way of doing it, because I mean the players should know what style of thing they're coming into. Yeah, I build up a scene. I build up the area we're gaming in, but they should be able to know the style of the world.
Yeah, I tried to read a lot of it, and again, just the limited time I have to devote to things like that probably didn't help, but I definitely found myself checking out real quick. And me personally, like, my own style when I'm DMing is usually pretty much home everything, like homebrew setting, all of it. Only because at that point, like, I'm not beholden unto something.
Yeah.
And I appreciate when things are like a little less detailed, because you do run into certain things in certain systems where, people are really attached to the specifics of things, and like having less of that straight in your face. I can't tell how many times that I've done something for D&D or something where I was doing it out of one of the source books, and you've just got a couple people that are getting really agitated because that's not how Scald acts or something. Like a little bit less for me is always more when it comes to the creative side of things.
Well, what about you, Rachel? I mean, you get probably more in the style than most of us.
Yeah.
You show up stylized in your fashion for the game. So
Like Q was saying, it's very beautiful. Like, I loved, like, seeing the fashion of it. I loved the aesthetic of it. But like you said, it didn't... I felt like I was reading very expositional, like, kind of like a history book in which it was just like, here's just information. And it takes you out of, like, delving into the actual world. And it's like, yeah, because I don't have a ton of, you know, just previous cyberpunk anything. Like, my only real frame of, like, reference is, like, Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell. Like, that's kind of it I have. So that was kind of, I was like, okay, I guess it's just this kind of world because there's not enough details. And because there's not enough details, the little, like, short stories they give you of characters, it's like, okay, but I don't know what this means.
Yeah, we got more of the style from the video game trailers.
Yeah.
Well, like, everything when I was looking at it just made me want to watch Ghost in the Shell.
All right.
Next topic.
All right. So we got story. We got
Format.
Now let's talk about the system. Blood Axe, how'd you do with the system, man?
The system was way too complicated, I think. The one thing I like about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and it took me a minute to get used to as I'm used to 3.5 D&D, is the skills were extremely streamlined. They, as opposed to this, you have probably 4 times number of skills than what you actually do need. I would rather them lessen the skill points and let them be more broad, more generalized, as opposed to being extraordinarily specified.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there was, I mean, we spent, 15, 20 minutes just figuring out Rachel's skill check.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, it could be this, but, like, they're so, like, specific. Like, conceal an item is its own skill check.
But there's also perception.
Exactly.
There's also stealth.
Like,
No, it's worse. The best example to me is social, that there's conversation and persuasion and, like, another social skill. And you're just like...
Which I will say, I get what they're going for, because when you think about in terms of a whole person, you sure do know a whole lot of people that, you know, they might be good at one part, but, man, they can't converse to save their fucking lives.
I agree that there are a lot
It's
that
too
could
much.
be condensed into... And then, like, halfway through I was confused because there's, like, persuasion or, like, perception, but then there's also human perception, which I get for the cyberpunk aesthetic. Like, if someone's more cyber than human, it's going to be a little different. But there was just so many very specific skill checks.
So I mean, is it the system that's complicated to you, or is it just the skills?
For me, personally, when you start breaking down the nuts and bolts, role-playing is role-playing.
Yeah.
And we're determining how we're going to roll our dice and what dice we're going to roll. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And you just had too many different things to roll your dice about. And yeah, like Blood Axe said, there was just so much of, wait a minute, is it this skill? Is it this skill? Specifically with, like, my character, I was going for a bit of duality, a bit of, like, no one is supposed to know which part of this guy's the real guy. Is this guy who can walk into an office building and talk his way into a meeting with somebody him, or is it the crazy guy who's staring at you and not saying anything? And when you're trying to build the character, you know, like, there were certain combat aspects I felt were really, like, central to what I was wanting to do. And then when you start, like, laying stuff down, you find yourself having to put points into things that, like, well, why can't you just go into acting? But I have to put points into this too, or the whole thing's not going to work. So then I have to take points away from this that I would like to be able to do so that I can just make this work at all. And that's just for me to play the character before I even, like, roll a die to make a check. Like, for me to be able to play this character the way I want to do it, I have to devote all this stuff into all these skills that, quite frankly, some of them should have just been rolled into one.
Yeah, did I roll persuade or acting to talk my way into the building?
Right.
Yeah.
But let me jump in if you don't mind, because the biggest thing that got me, I want to say, is that the oddest thing about the skills and the way checks are is that the base system is really simple. D10 plus stat plus skill.
Yeah.
Super
Pretty simple.
basic. But yet, like Bloodaxe said, very well said, is that I am literally not exaggerating when I think you could cut this down to 1/4 the number of skills it has. It has so many skills.
Easily.
It's got easy over 50 plus skills. I mean, to give you an example, you distribute 86 skill points. At start, you're distributing 86 skill points if you're doing I'm building this character from the ground up. That is a lot of points to distribute. And you know what's funny? It does not feel like enough. That says a lot.
Yes.
Just to be well-rounded. I'm a solo. I was a military dude. And I was mostly combat and wilderness survival and stuff like that. And I still didn't have all the skill points I wanted. I was like, but I'm really not that all over the place. But yet there were so many sub-skills. Oh, here's wilderness survival, but then here's tracking. But then here's endurance to see how well you actually handle yourself in there. Because you roll endurance to live in the woods.
It's just so much. Now, we're talking about style and me, and this is my personal feelings. Like, I get having, like, a level 1 character. Like, you can't do everything you want. But the problem that I felt with, it's supposed to be a cyberpunk game, and yet I only had one, like, I could only afford
The
one
barest minimum.
cyber
like,
thing.
Like a couple of years.
Like, that's it. And it was like, because even when you have, like, a level 1 character in, like, D&D, you still have, like, clearly my character has lived in this environment, this world for a while, despite being level 1 when I start out.
You have your armor and your sword.
Yeah,
Right.
fighter
The
has a sword
problem
and
that
stuff.
I had was I didn't feel like my character had lived in the cyberpunk universe
you're not
for a while.
cybery at all.
I literally had, like, one chip in an ear. Like, that's it. Like, I was basically a human, which is not what the cyberpunk... It's just so expensive. And it's like, to have the thing that I wanted, you only start off, if you do, like, the method 1, you only start off with 500, like, Euro bits or whatever they're called.
Well, no, it's
2,500, but that's to
Right,
get
but that's to
buying
get
all-
everything.
That's everything.
And, like, if I want to get, like, the cybernetic enhancements that I have, I can't have a weapon. And
You
it's
might
like...
not even have pants if you're
Exactly.
not careful.
Like,
So-
it's just not...
And this is what actually, when you get into it, that bothered me about it as I was reading what a lot of the cyber things do that are legitimately really expensive. Like a couple of the cyber eye things I wanted were really expensive, and they didn't do anything that felt like it would be remotely breaking to the
Example,
system.
I have an example. I've been waiting to call this out. If you want to start the game with cyber eyes that let you see in the dark,
You need 2 of them.
it is
'Cause it's per eye.
1,250 credits, and you start with 2,500 for everything, including pants.
Yeah, like, you gotta
half your
buy-
money
like
is
half
gone.
of your money and 20 points of your humanity. So you're down 2 whole stat points and half your money to do something that is so cheap in some of the other cyberpunk games. They're
And it
like, you want
also
eyes to see in the
seems
dark? Yeah,
very
man, that's like
basic
pocket change.
for, like, the cyberpunk universe. Like, I don't think I played a media, I don't think it is that far-fetched for her to just have the brain chip that everything she experiences is being recorded. Like,
And a
that seems
camera
like
eye.
it seems very normal. But even to think about getting that eye, you have to buy, it's 500 just for the neural link thing.
God forbid you
Yeah, it's
want
like
then
500 for the
for
eye.
each eye.
Then it's 500 for the camera.
Yeah, it's
and
just...
each like I wanted an arm. I wanted a cyber arm with like either a machine gun or a knife in it, which like
You tried to get a weapon in your arm?
right.
Forget it,
I know,
like-
right? Like it's a very simple cyberpunky thing, and everything I was reading before I read up on, like it made it seem like you were going to be able to just like, yeah, you're going to be able to do all this stuff, and then the nuts and bolts of getting in there and doing it were literally like, huh. So if I get the cyber arm, no enhancements, just the arm to put things in was half my money. Like just the arm. Like
Yeah,
it didn't
it
come
just-
for an empty arm.
Okay, I just didn't feel like my character lived in that world. It
Yeah,
felt
it could
like a
do much.
human from this universe just got
I will
teleported
yeah.
and had
You just
some...
graduated from high school, and
Right,
now
like-
you're a big bad cyberpunk.
I will say, especially looking at the art all throughout the book, everybody is cybered the hell
Yes,
up.
and
you
it,
know,
like
so.
that is the universe that you were presenting, and I feel like I can't be
Well,
that.
even and here's another mechanical thing. Like there's a mechanic in there that's up to DM discretion that like you can start with more money to build your character and get cybernetics if you're
sell
like
your soul.
Yeah, you're like
but it's
taking
very bad.
well, you're like taking out essentially like debt from gangsters to be cooler and have more cyber stuff, and the amount of money that to do it is still
really, really
not
low.
enough to do anything.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And the thing is that and I'm gonna do it. It's time for me to commit to sin.
Well,
Does disability also existed somewhere?
Yeah,
Okay.
before we go there, we'll go there in a bit. I mean, let me run through my. So as far as the mechanics go, I thought the system was relatively simplistic, other than the massive amount of skills that were honestly, it's not even the number of skills. I didn't have a problem with the number of skills. I like a diverse skill system. It was they didn't come up with a diverse skill system.
It was a lot of repetitive.
This ain't Palladium, which has
like-
a great skill system that's meaty.
And you know, it would have been easy to throw in also an education system that could have filled in some of the blanks because you are previous occupation type.
Palladium.
Yeah, and that could have filled in because then it would have been like, oh well, I want to do this. All right, well, you were a so-and-so, so obviously just roll your occupation. That covers a whole bunch of things.
Well, it's like Pathfinder 2, I think they do a really fantastic job of your skills translated from your stats.
And
then you have a little thing that you click that says, are you educated, trained, master, whatever, and then you get your bumps from that. And it makes sense for someone who's like, okay, well, you were educated in this because it's your skill to where we just click that thing that says you're educated in it, and boom, you've got your bumps from it.
And I mean,
it affects all of it.
That sort of leads us into our next session is sort of the meat, how much did we get? Like we've got this book with story and system and all that, but how much did we really get out of that? And I don't feel like we got a lot. Like, it was a lot of words for a little bit of content. Honestly, the equipment list is not
Sparse
even.
as hell.
Yeah,
There's not
even
a silencer for the guns.
The guns aren't even
there's not
broken
even a
down
silencer.
in anything.
Yeah.
It's just pistol, heavy pistol, really heavy pistol. That's
I
it.
think
Well, but they
lot-
have later on in the book, they have a thing where it's like quality. So you could buy a higher quality heavy pistol,
I
and
think that does anything.
it does, but it's like it's too expensive. It's like 3,000 credits, and it's like, why is this even here?
I think a lot of the like meat in the book was all like the exposition or like
Style.
yeah, but even that wasn't done well. Like we said before, like it's just I don't know. It feels like they tried to do a lot of things, but didn't do any of them particularly well.
Well, that's what you got, man.
I think we're also dancing around something that we didn't get a chance to really get into. Well, Evan did a little bit as far as the whole combat system goes.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at the combat itself, it's almost like a paranoia game to where you're rolling up a new character if you actually get into a fight.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to survive. If you survive the fight, you're not going to be a functional player.
Yeah, the crit mechanic was definitely could definitely be dangerous, especially with some of the bigger weapons and where you get a lot more D6s. I mean, as far as it being deadly and bloody, I once again, maybe if they had a more streamlined, easier system as far as character creation without the massive amount of skills that are really confusing, you might not worry so much if you're playing episodic and you build a character
you put so
here
much
and there.
effort
Well,
into a character.
Let me toss this in, and it's about theme. And one of the big themes in cyberpunk in general, not the game, but the whole genre, is debt. Like, yeah, a lot of the cyber stuff's supposed to be really expensive, and it's addressed in pretty much every cyberpunk thing I've ever seen. That you can go into Repo Men, Genetic Opera, all this stuff. You can go into massive debt to make yourself cyber,
Then you're working it off.
and right, like your whole life is around, like it makes sense that then your whole life is consumed by trying to work with your cyber stuff. And there's really not, like, there should be an actual system built into this that's like, like you want to start with more money and more stuff, it's going to cost you. And this is how it's going to cost you, and it's going to influence your character and how you play.
And they did
you could've
have
lost
a
your
small
cyber arm in one
section about black market parts and stuff like that, but it was one of those things where they just sort of half-assed threw it in there.
Skimpy.
Yeah, and it didn't affect the prices enough.
Yeah.
Oh no, it didn't. They
And
didn't go down
that
there,
that
no.
seems to be really the theme of Cyberpunk. As much as I wanted to love this, it seemed almost all of it, we keep talking about, is everything was sort of half-assed. Like, I don't expect there to be expansion. I don't expect there to be more rules, more equipment, because I don't think they really
They'd redo
care.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think they would just reprint it and there'd be a Cyberpunk Red edition, probably, or Cyberpunk 2, Cyberpunk Red second edition, before there would be another book. And honestly, they need to
Cyberpunk
do
Blue.
that.
But yeah, so
Actually,
I mean,
I'm
we
surprised I got away with the
a lot of
red
this was
in
just
this
a
day and
fun-
age.
hold on. What'd you say, Blood Axe?
I really think that this game was not intended to be a standalone system, but more of a way to supplement the actual video game coming out.
Which is
I think
sad.
that it
Like
was
a
an
board game.
afterthought that someone goes, "Oh, by the way, we're bringing out a new game. Let's go and throw in a tabletop game and see what kind of traction we get." And it was almost like Kathleen Kennedy was running the RPG department. It wasn't very well planned, wasn't well coordinated, and they just threw something out there and here, give us your money for this crap. And like Evan
And I
said,
did.
you got bacon on a turd sandwich as far as the game system goes.
Yeah.
So did the actual company that's making 2077 make this, or what are the ties to it?
No, because it says Talsorian game.
Right. So, to me, it definitely screams more of a, oh man, we need to get something out because this
Well,
is
it
going
also
to be
has
big.
Project Red. I mean, they
what it
also-
is that they threw it out to these other guys who I've never heard of and said make a tabletop, and they were like,
Yeah.
"How soon? Now?"
This really like we mentioned in the other show. Like this reeks of a lot of suitery to me, where you probably took some guys that had the right idea. They wanted to make something good and they wanted to put, something they loved into it. But then when you get things like the suits involved and the people who are going to push the papers and push the pens, who are going to say, you have to have the guys who are probably writing this aren't the guys who have the clout to say, no, fuck you, you get it when you get
Well,
it.
I mean, everything I saw,
It feels rushed, I guess is what I'm getting at.
the original creator of Cyberpunk seemed to be really involved with the game and with this, which is why I was really hoping for more.
Right.
Is because the older systems, they have a lot more than this system in the core books. Not even mentioning all the expansions and all that stuff. The core books have a lot more than this. So to see this the step back, and I don't know if this comes from the Pathfinders 2e and the D&D 5e, where they're trying to scrape off a bunch of stuff on these systems, but you don't do that on your equipment, for God's sakes,
No.
for sure. Not in a
a
cyberpunk
cyber game is
world
built on its
that's
cyberware
built off of
equipment.
cyberware and cyber
Yeah.
equipment and fashion and style, and you don't have any fashion and style in your equipment. You don't have any fashion and style.
And if you want to, it's incredibly
yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, like I'll say it like this, and our boy Blood Axe doesn't have much longer, so we're gonna jump to this. But to say it like this is that when I mentioned Palladium, the skills-based system of Palladium was when you were playing in a modern setting, and thus your job mattered. It was a zombie survival game where being a paramedic and the skills you got from that were important because it would explain, oh, I know how to triage, I know how to do this. But for Cyberpunk, I would have preferred a much simpler skill system, a more detailed combat system, and a way more detailed cyber system.
Yeah.
And that's where I think they missed the ball. They went skills, and I'm like, that's not what I care about, because here's the truth. With the right cyberware, you don't need skills. I don't care what my perception is if I have camera recording thermo eyes, honestly. Like, cyberware kind of mitigates a lot of that.
Well, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. For my wrap up, I'm going to say, the one good thing is it did have pretty pictures.
It looked
The group we played together, we really had fun.
Oh, the gameplay that we had was amazing. It was
But I mean, it wasn't because of the
the
book.
system, right?
We were like, oh, we're in this cyberpunk world. Let's do cyberpunk things,
As little as we can.
Yeah. And
I almost watched your character get her head blown off, and
Yeah.
it's going to do nothing. Like, literally.
so,
Like,
but I mean, that didn't come from the book, And I was almost happy that we have good role-playing people in our group because they avoided a lot of combat because I didn't really want to deal with this combat system.
Oh, I rolled 2 6s and you don't have a leg anymore.
So
like, boom.
They ended up just saying, fuck the system. We're just going to role-play through this thing. And that's pretty much how it went. And it was really fun. It's sad that the system doesn't really live up to the hype of Cyberpunk, and me being an old Cyberpunk player, it was also nostalgia coming into this, and so that really made it disappointing to me. It didn't fill a gap that we need as far as role playing goes. You know, we've got other systems out there that are better in this genre. You know, and if you're going to come in with a genre that has a system that hasn't been DOA, dead for 20 years or 30 years, and you're going to come back into the market, you've got to beat the other guys. You've got to do something that they're not doing or do it better. Yeah. And this system did not do that. So that's pretty much my verdict for it, yeah.
And it felt indie. It didn't even feel like it was made by a major company. It felt like that stuff you pick up off of RPG Now that was made by these guys over here. Because like I said, I own like 100 PDFs of every system. I'm a system collector. I'm a weirdo. I have games I haven't heard of. I constantly go through them. And it felt like the non-mainstream. It felt like something that 5 guys made over here.
We came out of this going, we could house rule this to make this better. We could house rule this to make this better.
But you shouldn't release a system that people feel like, well, we can play this, but we're going to change almost everything about it.
But I could also just go back and get the 2020 books and house rule up a little, clean up the technology and even and not have to do as much house ruling as I'd have to do.
Well, there's a third option also. That you're trying so hard not to say.
Well, no, and I mentioned other systems. I mean, we got Shadowrun. We got, we've got like modern D20 and our we have futuristic D20.
Modern. You said it backwards.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of those systems out there. But let me go ahead and jump over to, I guess, Blood Axe's final words, just in case he has to bail on us. What do you got on us, Blood Axe?
Well, I had fun with the group, and it was definitely more relaxed than some of our Pathfinder games. But we also went into it with, I think, me personally anyway, I made a joke character just because they have a rocker class, just because I thought it'd be hilarious to play a rocker, and it actually being probably the best choice that any of us could have made for the game. But the whole setup was we really didn't know each other. We really didn't care. So we all did our own thing. So even the whole system, the way it's set up, wasn't really conducive for a team game. It's more of drop in, drop out. If we have 8 people and only 3 or 4 show up on a Friday, good system because you can drop in, drop out whenever you need to, versus we really need all 4 of us to show up every single week to play. I'm sorry, I don't think I could do that with this system. There are other systems out that we can do that's going to be more engrossing. I can actually dive deeper into my character and actually enjoy compared to this. When, like you said, we're trying to avoid combat at all costs, which I understand the gravity of combat, and in real life, we try to avoid combat too. But you should be able to let your players have fun, cybering themselves up. Have really fun, creative, adventurous scenes, but this is not something that I'm really interested in playing again. I wasn't super excited going into it and not really excited about going back to it. I'd rather play something else.
It definitely felt like this was more of a tabletop ad campaign for the video game. And while I understand that, there's some crossover between tabletop RPG players and video game RPG players, I fall in both those categories. But when I want to play a tabletop game, it's very different for me. It's very different than playing a video game, and I love both those things, but I love them separately. And especially as essentially a baby coming into tabletop RPG games, it was too complicated for me to try to think about making a character. If I didn't have Evan I wouldn't have been able to make a character. Like, I would have had to have someone else's help. And I don't think that that's how you should make a game like this if you want new players.
Quinn?
Just to ride on what they said, I mean, that's the biggest thing. What I'm even hearing from them, which helped me formulate my opinion, is that any game you can do anything. That's true.
Yeah.
Players can fill in the gaps. But having a rules systems that supports your goals is what you really want. To give an example, when Evan was talking about what he was trying to do, I literally sat there, and for a particular system, I said, they have that. They have that. They have that too. They have that. They have that. And he's just sitting here kind of looking at me, and finally it got to the point that I sent him a link to it because he's just like, wait a minute, it has all this. Like, yeah, you want to look like every dude? They have the bland face. You look normal. It's a perk you can get. It's like, oh, you want to owe money? They have this mysterious cyberware that's been installed in you that you don't know, but it's a mission now. You got to track down who put this cyber. They actually have a you woke up with cyberware, and you don't know where it came from.
If you're
And
trying to
that's
sell
awesome.
a system, I don't think that it should be bad enough to where the people who get it are like, we're going to play a different game.
And it literally gave such a jonesing that we're now going to play, but we like the style so much that we're going to basically absorb some of the style into the other system, but we're going to play with the other system because everyone's characters will be better actualized in this other system because it has it. And it's not just because they lack the books. No, they just didn't even, because the biggest thing, I got to get this out because Zeno made a great observance that I didn't catch at first. It's not merely the system's not well built now. They didn't leave themselves room
there's
to
no
fix
room.
it. Like, the next book would have to rewrite the first book to fix it. You can't just add in more cyberware. The whole cyberware system is
Needs a
kind of busted
redo,
for
yeah.
character creation. And the guns and the way you do all your weapons is kind of busted. They would have to make a new book and go, these are the new cyber rules. No, literally, all that's gone. Here's all the new rules. Here's all the new rules for weapons. Here's the rules for combat. We changed the skills. So at that point, it's not an additional book. It's just freaking Cyberpunk 2.0.
Yeah.
Like Cyberpunkred 2.0. So I'm still looking forward to the game because luckily the game doesn't seem to use any of these rules, thankfully. Like, so I'm still looking forward to the video game. Don't get mad at me, cyberpunkred. You let these people put together a trash show for a book.
Now none of y'all, you mentioned some of that did give something I wanted to bring up. And that's none of y'all played a hacker or a tech type guy.
I read the rules.
The system for that was just super lazy. And that's just another thing that they screwed up on.
It ain't the Matrix.
It's literally a stair step system. You just got to roll a bunch of times and hope you continue to succeed.
Yeah.
There's no real feel to it. It's just like, all right, layer 1, roll. Layer 2, roll. Layer 3, roll.
Compared to like that other system where you've got like, these are my programs at these ratings. I built before you even go online, if you build I was going to call it a decker, you build like, how do I attack the net? Yeah. Here's my stuff. Here's my programs. Now you roll it in a battle. It's like Pokemon, except with hacking. Like I'm using Gyarados sniffer program and my Mewtwo Black Ice. I mean, in fact, you could literally do that. Your whole theme could be I'm a Pokemon trainer and all my programs look like Pokemon. Like it's just there's more meat on existing systems, and the best way it was said is you're trying to break into this world. People have been there for 20 years perfecting it, and you throw in a ham sandwich. And it's a 5-star restaurant world. You go, ham sandwich. And everybody goes, this ain't even ham. This is bologna, man. You didn't even go Oscar Mayer. It's Kmart brand. Like that's what they did. They just went, wait for the video game.
Well, I will say, we're kind of like, we mentioned this a little bit when we played on Friday night. Like, we're all kind of living in a time where nerd media is at a level of a place I imagine none of us, with the exception of Rachel, because she's younger, like Mark, Q, Blood Axe. I can't imagine back when I was a teenager and playing D&D for the first time ever thinking, A, I would do it in public, B, have a public game, C, tell girls that I do this.
And it'd be cool.
And it'd be a thing that they're like, oh, wow, I'm interested. Like, that was some like all this nerd stuff that we do now. That was stuff you hid that. You hoped a girl rolled in eventually. Like, it's just so different that I feel like everybody feels like they have to have this version of this thing for what's currently going on. I'm incredibly, remarkably surprised that we don't have a Pokemon tabletop RPG.
I
yet.
think there is one.
Oh
actually.
my God!
I
No,
mean,
I told
like a
you.
real
I've read a
one?
bunch of them. They're terrible.
Right,
Yeah.
but like I'm talking like a real official,
A popular.
like
I think they pushed
I
one
think they
out.
do have an
They
official
pushed
one.
one out, I think, based on Rifts or something, or what? What not Rifts?
No.
What's the
one that's widely used,
what's
so that people
that
talk about.
system? The core something
Palladium?
core. No. Anyway, I'm pretty sure there is one. I think I've seen the books, but anyway, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So, all right, guys, I think that sort of gets you the idea of cyberpunk. It is that little bit of a song you hear that you now, to get it out of your head, you got to go find the real thing,
Or
the
a
whole
bullet.
thing.
Play Shadowrun 4th edition.
But I think when we talked about it, this is basically a 1 out of 5 stars if you want to go with a star system, or
Your green screen blocked the Blood Axe.
or if you go with the buy don't buy system. I think this is a don't buy.
I think 1 star is generous.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Unless it's Hitman. 5 stars for Hitman. 4 stars for Monkey Business.
You know, Lex?
And I've always played like a either a Decker or a Street Samurai type character, but I've never played something like that. And actually, I had so much fun playing that character, even though he was a goofball character. We've even discussed transitioning him over as a face in Shadowrun.
All right, guys. That's our Cyberpunk Red review.
I got the last word.
Hopefully,
didn't.
you guys
Joke.
don't. You know, if you're fans of Cyberpunk, you don't hate us. I'm a fan of Cyberpunk. It's just this book wasn't there. Be sure to check us out, Dicejunkies.com, for links everywhere we can be found. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. We do a live show every Sunday at 3:30. And, if you like this review, hit that like button. Leave us a comment down below.
Subscribe
Be
to
sure
our
to
OnlyFans.
subscribe. Hit the little
You won't let me make
notification
one.
bell. All that good stuff. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. And as always, we hope you enjoy.